Hello and welcome. I'm Court Booth. I'm back with another By the People series program. The series is an effort to bring before the viewers of CCTV town officials, appointed and elected, town volunteers, and others who make this a wonderful place to live and work and raise kids. And I think that's a good segue for our guests today, raising kids. It's something that they are quite occupied with. To your left, my far right, is Bonny Wilbur. Hi, Bonny.
Hi, Court.
And immediately next to me is Jennifer Clarke. And they are respectively the Community Services Coordinator, working for the town of Concord, and the Youth Services Coordinator. So I think it would be accurate to say that in Concord we have an expanding human service capability. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How did it come about that the jobs that you hold, the responsibilities that you have, emerged as needs that the town should be addressing?
So as Youth Services Coordinator, my position was established after the 3 youth suicides that we had at the high school in 2009, 2010. And the intent was really to look at what kinds of healthy family and youth development do we have outside of the school system. So our schools have our kids 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and what are the things that exist at the town to support healthy development. That piece was happening at the same time that Council of Aging has their charge, Concord Recreation has their charge, Veteran Affairs, and also our town social worker. The work has always been happening, but we've been sort of individual silos. And now we collaborate really across the lifespan. So we're serving residents from when they start to end of life in these different pieces.
What we are looking at is a bigger picture where the town is trying to take an integrated view at how it can support its citizens.
Exactly, and that's where we work together.
My position was part-time. It's now full-time, and eventually it probably will become more than full-time because there's enough work out there. But it's great because we work as a team. Jen does a lot of work in the schools, and we will help anybody under the age of 60. We have a fabulous Council on Aging in town, which I worked for as program supervisor there for 5 years. So I've moved over here. I've been in this role just about 1 year, so I've been here for 6 years. And that was a great move because I'm doing a lot of the same sort of thing. I supervised the social workers at the Council on Aging, and now I am a social worker for the town. Council on Aging's everybody 60 and above. There's a lot of help there. There's a lot of support. There's programming. They have a lot of social workers on staff. And Jen and I are everybody under 59 and below. So we'll help anyone. I mean, we're really here to help. If there's a problem, reach out and let us know. I mean, we're here to help. I'm really a referral in many ways. Someone comes to me with almost any issue, and I'm happy to either help you myself, advocate for you, or refer you somewhere. We can really hopefully get an answer for you. And we make a good team. I think we work really well. It's
Got
a
it.
good team.
How does your work address the fact that we've got certain age brackets that require certain kinds of specialized focus?
Sure. Well, my focus is largely, I would say, 0 to about 22, 23, so you're a recent college student. And I think largely what this coordinated effort allows us to do is that you really, if you're looking at youth issues, you really need to support the whole family. And so in terms of how many households under the age of 60, I don't have that information, but the idea is that our kids are one aspect of a larger group, which is a family. And so when you look at services that we provide, if we're only treating a mental health issue with the student and we're not addressing some of the other issues that may result for the family, then we're not doing our job. So this sort of coordinated effort, I think, allows us to do just that. And so Bonny really can service the whole family on what that might look like.
I do a lot of helping people pay their bills, which is surprising. When I first took this job, friends knowing Concord would say, what do you do? You got a job? What do you do? Because it is a wealthy town, so if you're not wealthy, it's hard to live here. If you have kids in the schools, it's really hard to live here because those kids are, going to special camping trips, going away with the school, and you are just barely making it. You don't have the money. Now, we're a wealthy town and we're a really generous town. So we're so lucky. There are a lot of funds that I can help direct people to. There are town funds. There's some state funds, there's federal funds, and I can help depending on what your problem is, what you need help with. I can send you in the right direction. Some of the funding I can actually do the application for you. Some of them, they require me. I'm trained to help fuel assistance every year. It's federal funding that's given to the state, and we have a lot of people apply every year, but they have to go through me and the intake worker in town. They're intake workers at the Council on Aging if you're over 60. People don't know what they don't know. I think that's the most important thing. I learned that when I was at the Council on Aging. People would come in and they would have a problem, they'd present one way, and we'd fix the problem. And I would know what else was available, and I'd say, okay, we've taken care of that. What's going on with this? Are you having trouble feeding yourself? That sort of thing. Oh, well, we have open table in town, and we have, a lot of different ways that I can help you. So it's great to be able to meet someone, get to really know them, and then help them on a really broad scale.
So were I to have a need that I couldn't fully articulate or quantify, you would help me do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we're a good partnership. We have very different jobs. You can find me, I'm in my office, I have appointments with people. If they can't get to me or they're uncomfortable coming to the social worker, I'll do a home visit. I'm happy to do that. If no one wants me in their home, we can go to the library. Whatever works, I'd love to meet you. I do a lot of work on the phone. A lot of people call me, a lot of people email me. Whatever way we can do it, but I want to get to know you. And once I get to learn, as I said, a little bit more about you, I can say, hey, there's also help here, there's help here, there's help here.
Let's look at the idea that Concord is a very small town. Sometimes we might even say insular. How do you protect people's confidentialities around this? Because you're getting into some sticky stuff, aren't you? What are the rules?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, actually, because that's often I'm asked that, and that is key. Confidentiality is key. Have to be really careful about that. So that's one of the first things I talk to when someone comes into my office. Sometimes they'll talk to me and that's it. No one else knows. I cannot tell anyone else, that's fine. I'm still happy to help them. Often though, if I'm referring them somewhere, I'm helping them find, if it's money in particular, or housing or food or whatever it is, we're gonna have to let someone else know because we have to show that they qualify or that they're really in need. So we'll talk about that. But I'm really pleased that you brought that up because we're all about that. As a therapist, that's what we're all about. And Jen is too, we have to be because we get inside people's families and they have to know that they can trust us and they can. There has never been a breach. You can't do this job if you want to talk.
Got it.
And I think there's a larger piece too. Again, Bonny does a lot of the day-to-day social work, connecting with families. And one of the charges that I brought to this position and what I think we've accomplished is that we're asking people to talk about difficult conversations and the ability to reveal yourself and ask for help, particularly in a community like Concord where there's this assumption that everyone's living behind a white picket fence, is just simply not true. So what we're trying to do is bring to the community conversations that take people out of their comfort zone a little bit because we know that that's where some families are at. It shouldn't surprise us that we have divorce or there's accidents or medical issues or a mental health issue. We have Route 2 that cuts right through our community. We're not insular in the sense that we're in a bubble, although that's often a common joke. So what we try to do is engage the community in conversation so that maybe if someone is experiencing pain in some place, whether it's financial or other, that they might be willing to come forward at more of a prevention level than crisis or intervention, because there it gets harder. The work gets harder. It's not impossible, and we certainly invite people to come to us at that stage, but if we can get people connected to the resources sooner by engaging the conversation, by creating safe space. So when I think about that Center for Parents and Teachers and some of the parent education that they do, it's got to be hard. You're a parent, you're feeling some pain or exposure, you self-select, you come to a parent ed, speaker's really where you're at, and you ask a question, and you're in front of 60 or 70 of your other peers. That's not an easy thing to do in a small town. So when you have folks like, again, Center for Parents and Teachers who are really bringing difficult conversations to the community, we're there to also support that, whether that's helping those organizations run those types of programs and helping to find some financial partners to help with that, or just being there sort of as an ally to say, yeah, you know, the road doesn't stop here just because you've come to this parent ed. Are there other things that we can do to connect you? And that's hard. You know, nobody wants to sit down and talk about suicide unless you're really in it. It's kind of that what you don't know. What was the phrase? You don't know what you don't know. But if we can get people earlier at prevention, I feel like that's a success for us. And I'm even going to take this opportunity to show you. Bonnie's predecessor, Eileen, and I basically said, if someone doesn't get to Bonnie's door, well, isn't it a shame if they still can't access the information?
And many don't. I don't mean to interrupt, but many don't. I mean, it's just the shame issue. They should. I'd love to help them, and I understand that myself. You don't want, it's a big hurdle to admit to yourself you really need this and to do it, so there you go.
So we developed this guide, which basically takes our Rolodex of where the frequently places we would refer someone, and we created this guide, which is both online and at the library in Concord Rec and the townhouse. And again, if we can just meet people where they're at in asking for help, it doesn't mean that they have to come and sit across from Bonnie to share their concerns.
More tools for self-advocacy.
Self-advocacy, yeah. So when we talk about culture, again, you know, there's always this joke, we live in this bubble, but Bonnie will share with you, and I, you know, people find themselves going, how did I get here? I didn't know this was going to happen. And the great thing is we have tremendous community partners who can support our healthy youth and family development in places like the Community Chest and the organizations that they fund, Human Services, Emerson Hospital, our community partners, recreation, police, fire. It's a coordinated effort, and there's a lot of places to catch people.
The Concord Carlisle Community Chest was in fact instrumental in the establishment of your positions, both of them, was it not?
Absolutely.
They still are.
They still are.
So we're really talking about a public-private, nonprofit, community-based enterprise, not one that originates solely from town government.
No, and it's good you bring that up because we are the only two in town. We actually also help people in Carlisle. I mean, and I think the other town just really helps Concord people, but
by
certainly,
virtue of the funding?
Yes, absolutely. So people in Carlisle, which is you know, good to know. People need to know that because they don't have their own social worker at this point. They have a great council on aging, but they don't have their own social worker. So that's me for that town as well.
You mentioned the community partners, and much of the work that you've described is very individual or family-oriented, and yet some of the work is also more community-based and educationally based. So could we talk a little bit about that? Because there is a great deal going on in the way of individual support. What else is going on in the way of community-wide education that floats the whole boat higher in terms of a healthier community?
That's you,
Well, you know, so it's a great question, and there is a lot of sort of behind-the-scenes work that happens. A great community partner for me is our school system. I have tremendous support from Superintendent Rigby, Kristen Herbert, Director of Teaching and Learning, and have really enjoyed getting to know Principal Mastrullo over this past year. And I get invited to the table to participate on sort of those global conversations. So things like Challenge Success, which is a school-based initiative to really look at some of the systems that are in place to support students because we are concerned about stress. So that's a great community school partnership that's happening. If I look at with the Board of Health, Susan Rask and myself are applying actually right now for a grant to look at substance use and abuse across the lifespan. We know that the key to prevention is going to happen at the youth level, which is where my role comes in. But Susan, of course, is looking across the lifespan, and we're looking to gather some data from both the hospitals, the schools, the police. It resides in a lot of places, and can we put together the story? What is Concord's story? So those kinds of things are sort of happening behind the scenes that people wouldn't necessarily know are happening on a day-to-day basis. So those are at least my examples.
I work with a domestic violence services network too. It's good that we know each other. I went couple of weeks ago, I went and talked to the court, actually. They wanted to know what we do, and some of the judges and some of the prosecuting attorneys were there, and we just talked about how we could work together, which I think is important. We work closely with the police. We know them quite well, and that can be really, really helpful. I worked very closely when I worked at Council on Aging with them as well, but it's really helpful too, and we can help each other. Sometimes we'll know them in another way, and so I can get some information from the police if we have a release, again, very
Sure.
important, and we can help, so we can come at a problem from more than one way, which is always really, really helpful.
So you mentioned the word stress. So I've got a two-part question in that we might be experts at our own needs and our own pain today, but you talk about the life cycle and the different kinds of experiences we can have, and perhaps I don't know what the future brings for me, or families might say the same. They don't know what tomorrow's challenges are going to be.
Sure.
But you take a bigger view, trying to look at this in a life cycle perspective. So here's my two-part question. The typical question you probably expected, which is, what's new and different in the way of societal pressures and social demands on people that we have to learn how to cope with? Opioids would be an obvious example, but what's new and different and requires a lot of attention? And then the other question, which is not as often asked, what are the perennial pressures that just keep coming around and around and around for you to help us solve? That probably will never go away.
I'm ready to take question one, because
I thought so. 'Cause yeah, we look at that more often, don't we?
We do. We do. I would say, so a lot of my work is guided by what data we have that students are telling us. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a good part of that. And I would say the areas that we are maybe paying more attention to or increasing the conversation is certainly a lack of sleep. And that is attributed to many things, and I'm not the
Present
expert.
company included,
Right, exactly. So
Mothers, yeah.
I always try to explain to folks, I'm not the functional expert, but I can point you to the people who know these answers. But we're looking at sleep. Our students are reporting a significant deficit in the amount of sleep that they are supposed to get versus what they actually are getting. And that comes from overscheduling, technology, pressures. So that's a conversation that myself, Emerson Hospital, the schools, again, the Challenge Success Committee, that's become more topical, that conversation. And it'll be interesting to see with the late start now at the high school, how that conversation continues. But
So quickly,
Yeah.
bring us up to date on that.
oh gosh, so the costs associated with that were passed at the recent town meeting. So school for the high schoolers will begin at 8 a.m. Come this fall.
Which is a full 30 minutes or so.
It's a full 30 minutes, and the research and recommendations certainly moved the needle a little bit closer to 8:30, but obviously school committee needed to look at what was palatable for the community.
Sure.
So this is a community that's no different than many of the others that are also looking at this issue of sleep and later start time. So sleep, definitely concerning. Marijuana. Marijuana is a fast-changing landscape. What you and I might have experienced in the 70s and 80s is a very different product, very different social norms, very different access. So that conversation is evolving actually quite quickly. And I think a lot of communities and towns and education systems are looking to stay current, but it's moving so quickly. And then I think this is sort of perennial, but it's different because of the times that we're in now. Mental health. There's an effort to break the stigma that's associated with mental health. You often hear if you hurt your knee, you'd go to the doctor. So why is that different with depression and anxiety? It's always been there. This isn't a new phenomenon, but there's certainly an uptick in what we are seeing students report for stress, suicide ideation, certainly the recent controvery over the Netflix show 13 Reasons Why.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's great that the conversation is coming forward. We just need to do it responsibly and make sure people understand sort of the resources, and I would say those are sort of the three that have changed the most quickly. If I look at perennial, adolescence is adolescence.
Yeah.
I have a child who's
A time of rapid change,
a time
and uncertainty.
of exactly. You know, we both have emerging drivers. You know, so
Yeah.
there's that whole thing. We've got prom this weekend, and that's an age-old conversation between parents and children about making safe choices. So yeah, you can't change puberty. I think it's everyone would reflect knowing that those are sort of the perennial challenges that come with adolescence.
And I think my job is about the perennial stressors. People need to be able to heat their home. People need to be able to feed their family. They need to be able to pay their bills. And so, you know, for all these really big problems that families are facing, we can help. I mean, we can help. There's programs to get fuel assistance, as I mentioned before, from state funds, but we have local funds in town that have been donated that, you know, if you qualify, we absolutely can give you some heat. You know, we can help you with the oil. We have open table. Food pantries are very important. People, again, can't believe there are people in Concord who cannot feed their children. We're about to open Table's about to open a food pantry just in June in Maynard. And that's very popular for Concord people, because Concord people don't want to go to First Parish here because they're going to see people they know because of the shame factor. So that's very exciting, very, very exciting. So people, I work very closely with CMLP, with the light plant too, because often that's where because we're small towns, what I like about Concord, it's small town. So if someone can't pay their bill, if they have thousands of dollars that in a balance, what CMLP will do is say, call Bonny. It's wonderful. So this person is stuck. I mean, and of course, we have to make sure that they really can't pay their bill, but then what I do is I work with them, which again is good because there's probably other stuff going on that I can help them with. So they talk to me, I call CMLP and say, John Doe is working with me, please hold off, do not disconnect, it's just gonna make everything worse. So they will. I mean, that's just so wonderful. Even Concord Oil is very, very good. They really don't like to let people go be cold in the winter, even though they're obviously a private company.
So rather than provider and customer having a conflict, now there's three
and it's just
people connected,
it's very
three parties
helpful.
connected.
It's just, and it feels good. It's just very nice. And one other thing I was going to mention earlier, what I have found really interesting in this job is the number of single mothers who come in and sit and talk to me, and many of them are just making it. They are working full time. They've got kids in the school system, maybe more than one or two. Many have escaped violence or are not getting any support, so that's it. And their life is just working. And they think they're the only ones. They absolutely, to the point that now I'm thinking some of them have started, I have said, you're not the only single mother in town. Actually, I have a number of single mothers. Oh, I'd love to get together. Because single mothers need different kind of help than people who, if a mom is home and has a spouse who's working. So now they're saying, maybe we can get a little group going so they can at least know who they are. So if they're running late at work, they could maybe call someone and say, could you pick up my kid and then I'll pick up your kid? Because of course, I can't really even afford daycare or babysitters easily.
I've assumed, and I'll put it to you to fact check this one. I've assumed that someone very comfortable in our town, me, you, or a neighbor, might well not be so comfortable if they had to absorb 2 or 3 or 4 difficult life circumstances at the same time. Could we weather the loss of a job, perhaps, or a marital breakup, perhaps, or death or illness, perhaps, but again, my assumption has been any one of us, no matter how resilient we might be, might find ourselves more than challenged if some of those life events unfortunately happened simultaneously or in close proximity. Is that true? Is
Absolutely.
that how it happens?
Yes, and I actually am now working with a family where both husband and wife lost their job. And they look like you and me, and they're affluent, and they've been, and of course, you live up to your means. And it's no less of a crisis for these people. I mean, I have people who are making almost nothing. They're barely making it. But this family who, you know, have a double income and their kids are in college or they're going on trips, they've got bills, and it is a crisis for them. So again, I don't see as many of those. There aren't as many, hopefully. But I'm happy to help them too, and it absolutely is a crisis for them. Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things that I remember very vividly when I first took this position. We do a holiday gift drive. And the idea really is we're not going to save someone's holiday by giving them 5 or 6 gifts for their child. But it's a really nice time to meet somebody because it's under happy circumstances. We can give them a little assistance, so it isn't always.
We do save some holidays.
Well, we do. I guess
being modest, we absolutely.
But
have.
I'll never forget. There was a young woman who came in her work uniform with 2 young children back at home, and she literally stood there amongst, we must have 200 toys.
Yeah.
And she just started sobbing, and she said, "I can't believe I'm here." And she's gainfully employed, and we'd pass her in Crosby's and think, here's someone that's got it going on and working out. And of course, I start crying, which doesn't always help the situation.
And then
but
I cry.
I mean, she was really overwhelmed by the generosity, certainly, to know that there are neighbors that care. So that was certainly a piece of it. But also just this moment of like, I can't believe I'm the person asking for help. So those are, do we experience that at the same level that maybe some of our surrounding towns? Not always, but we have several people in this community that are working really, really hard to make it work. And so it just reminded me of that.
We have
Good,
families who
thank you.
choose between presents and a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I want to give a plug for the Masonic Angel Fund. They are fantastic. The Masons in town, it's an active chapter. They come through. They're fantastic. They give gift cards every Christmas, and they come up with a lot of money. And one family I was working with one year had decided that presents were more important than a tree. I'm going to start crying. And they showed up. The Masons just showed up with a tree and with music, and help them decorate the tree, so that they were able to have, the little boy was able to have gifts and a tree, and and the mother keeps telling me about this, mentions it to me pretty frequently, how it was so important to her, and it just saved her Christmas. Yeah.
What advice or inspiration might you share with us about how we could, in fact, lend a hand?
I do want to say that we actually have such a generous community that anytime we sort of answer the call, we put out the call, I'm always so pleased with the response. There's a couple organizations in town that I think, because we tap into them so frequently, any of the community chest supported organizations are a great place to start.
Easy web search, Concord
Easy
Carlisle
Community
Community
Chest.
The chest
Sure.
does. It's amazing.
It's
what
really.
I said to the executive director, I don't know what Concord would be like if we didn't have you.
Right.
It's astonishing what they
So
do.
any of the 30s plus organizations that they support are deeply engaged in our community. I would encourage folks, we actually have a partnership that To Volunteer, which helps students achieve their community service goals because they have to meet a 40-hour commitment to community service before graduation. To Volunteer publishes all of the community service opportunities that are geared towards teens, but that certainly is a great way to discover other places for adults and families to connect into our community. And then I think just being open to the idea, again, this idea that asking for help or any kind of stigma, I would encourage people to be careful with their words. We never really know what someone's working through. And again, this idea that we're in a bubble and everything's humming along just fine, for a lot of people that is true. But you just never know what some family is working through behind the scenes. And it's nice to know that they're supported and there are places for them to connect. But I think anything that we can do to contribute to the idea that folks get connected sooner, because again, once you get to crisis or intervention, it's a lot harder for us and our community partners to resolve that for the family. So I would say be generous with your words.
So I'll summarize that as in our daily lives, be kind, be respectful, be supportive, be loving, and know that we're giving beyond measure, but don't always know how, because we don't know what that other person is experiencing.
Absolutely.
Right.
I want to thank Bonny Wilbur. I want to thank Jennifer Clarke for joining us today, the Community Services Coordinator and the Youth Services Coordinator, respectively. It's been my pleasure to join you today, and I know I speak for Bonny and Jennifer as I say that as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Clarke.